It is the closing days of April 1945. Adolf Hitler is suffering from a complete mental collapse. His end is near, and he knows it. He summons his secretary, Gertrude Traudl-Junge, instructing her to record his last will and testament. With tears in her eyes, she writes down his delusional words, his perspective. None of this bloodshed is his responsibility. Within 24 hours, all 4 witnesses present in that room, along with Hitler himself, will be dead. We will explore that disturbed will in detail later, as it perfectly reflects his derangement. Hitler had realized long before this, perhaps as early as 1943, that the war was lost. Yet he clung to a faint hope for peace negotiations. By early 1945, however, his enemies were advancing deeper into German territory. The Soviet Red Army was determined to utterly destroy Germany. Soviet leader Joseph Stalin, whom Hitler had the audacity to label a barbarian, could see victory was imminent. In January alone, 450 Germans perished, and in the following 3 months, another 280 would die. This exceeded the German losses of 1,942, 1,943, showing how obstinately the Nazis refused to surrender. By February, Hitler's commander in Hungary observed his men sinking into despair. He reported, "Amid all these stresses and strains, no improvement in morale or performance is visible. The numerical superiority of the enemy, combined with the knowledge that the battle is now being fought on German soil, has proved very demoralizing for the men." As Soviet forces advanced, civilians fled their home. One woman wrote, "The world is a very lonely place, without family, friends, or even the familiarity of a home." In April, a Russian soldier wrote to his sweetheart, "At first the fascists fought back fiercely, but they could not endure this hell. Everything is bound to finish soon." On April 16, Soviet troops breached Berlin. Residents could hear gunfire close by. Some rushed to shops to grab what remained of the food. Poet Ruth Andreas Friedrich described the scene. "Before us lies the endless city, black in the black of night, cowering as if to creep back into the earth, and we are afraid." Still, the Nazis carried out killings without pause. Prisoners were executed after jails were emptied. German firing squads murdered those suspected of disloyalty. Prisoners of war and concentration camp inmates were slaughtered in mass shootings. Hitler's orders were to continue without relenting. Even the Hitler Youth were fighting the Soviets hand to hand. One woman recalled seeing young baby faces peeping out beneath oversized steel helmets and described the horror of hearing their high-pitched voices, calling it proof of the madness of war. Why did so many continue fighting? Historian Max Hastings wrote in Inferno that Germans knew the Red Army would offer no mercy. For them, it was either resist or be killed. Given the brutality they had inflicted on the Soviets, the Russians had no inclination to spare any Germans, soldier, or civilian. Yet the crimes committed against German non-combatants cannot be ignored. One woman summed up her disbelief saying, "It can't be me this is happening to, so I'm expelling it all from me." During these final days of carnage, Hitler remained in his bunker beneath the Reich Chancellery. The death of U.S. President Roosevelt on April 12 briefly raised his hopes that new President Harry Truman might agree to peace. No such thing occurred. On April 22, Hitler suffered a breakdown upon learning his counterattack orders had been ignored. He raged at those he considered traitors. It was on this day that he finally admitted defeat, 2 days after his birthday, which had passed with little celebration. His last public appearance had been to congratulate Hitler Youth willing to die for him. His health was so poor that he hid one trembling hand behind his back. Back in the bunker, Hitler prepared to marry his longtime mistress, Eva Braun. In the final days, Braun worried about concealing her jewelry. In her last letter to friend Herta Ostermeyer, she wrote, "On no account must Heise's bills be found. What should I say to you? I cannot understand how it should have all come to this, but it is impossible any more to believe in God." Many within Hitler's inner circle sought to flee. Hermann Göring left for southern Germany under the pretext of business, in truth trying to safeguard his stolen art collection. When Hitler learned that Göring had reached out to the enemy, his fury grew. Göring would feature in his will as a traitor. Martin Bormann, Hitler's private secretary, remained in the bunker but would attempt to escape after Hitler's death, only to perish soon after. Joseph Goebbels also stayed and would be appointed Chancellor of Germany, but he, his wife, and their 6 children would not survive the bunker. While Berlin suffered relentless bombardment, Goebbels issued a final broadcast urging citizens, "I call on you to fight for your city. Fight with everything you have got, for the sake of your wives and your children, your mothers and your parents. Your arms are defending everything we have ever held dear, and all the generations that will come after us. Be proud and courageous. Be inventive and cunning." That he and Hitler could demand continued resistance in the face of certain annihilation spoke to their arrogance and madness. On April 27, Hitler learned via a BBC broadcast that Heinrich Himmler had sought to negotiate surrender. Hitler erupted in unprecedented rage, branding it treason and ordering Himmler's arrest. Himmler fled into hiding, only to die days later. His betrayal was genuine. He had indeed attempted peace talks. Even so, Hitler decided there was still time for a wedding. Just after midnight on April 28, he and Eva Braun were married in a brief ceremony attended by Goebbels and Bormann. With Soviet troops closing in, the celebration consisted only of a wedding breakfast with heavy drinking. Braun signed the marriage certificate as Eva B., then crossed out the B and replaced it with Hitler. She would not have long to enjoy her new name. Hitler's barber, August Wallenhaupt, normally trimmed his mustache at 11 a.m., and valet Heinz Linge would follow a ritual of timing Hitler's preparations with a stopwatch, then handing him glasses and newspapers. In the final days, Hitler told Ling, "You must never allow my corpse to fall into the hands of the Russians. They would make a spectacle in Moscow out of my body and put it in waxworks." Linge also administered cocaine drops for Hitler's damaged right eye and gave him pills for chronic flatulence. Hitler was on nearly 28 different medications. Looking frail enough to die from natural causes, a Hitler youth who escaped the bunker recalled, "He was like a ghost. He didn't seem to see me or anyone. He just stared ahead, lost in thought. He looked so much more unhealthy than 10 days earlier at his birthday reception. His face was sallow." News of Mussolini's execution and public humiliation reinforced Hitler's fears of a similar fate. Learning that Dachau had fallen to the Americans, and hearing reports of mass executions of captured German troops, only deepened his dread. It was then that Hitler called Junge to record his will. She later claimed ignorance of Nazi crimes, but admitted she had adored Hitler, calling him a pleasant boss and a fatherly friend. On that night, Hitler told her, "Come along. I want to dictate something." He specified that his body must be cremated, his art sent to Linz, and smaller personal items given to relatives and loyal workers, with all remaining valuables going to the Nazi Party. His will included the declaration, "Since I did not think I should take the responsibility of entering into marriage during the years of combat, I have decided now to marry the woman who entered voluntarily into this already almost besieged city, to share my fate. She goes to death with me as my wife, according to her own desire." He denied starting the war, instead blaming international Jewry and branded Himmler and Göring as traitors. His final directive, "Above all, I obligate the leadership of the nation and its followers to pitiless resistance against the universal poisoner of all people, international Judaism." Givet Berlin, 9. April, udsende og 945 Adolf Hitler. The document bore the signatures of Goebbels, Bormann, Bergdorf, and Krebs, all doomed to die soon after. Shortly after, his dogs were poisoned, and Braun declared she would not leave. Her last words to Junge came with the gift of a fur coat. "Take my fur coat as a memory. I always like well-dressed women." Goebbels later announced Hitler's death at 3:30 p.m. On April 30, Hitler and Braun's bodies were burned in the Reich Chancellery Garden as Soviet guns roared nearby. Goebbels and Bormann poured petrol over the corpses and lit them, giving the Nazi salute. Fighting continued, even after their deaths. British Lieutenant David Fraser observed, "There is still too much vile cruelty in the world for us to be able to say with true satisfaction, 'Good is victorious.' Let us hope nothing like it ever happens again."